Hey, ladies and gentlemen, how's it going? This is Inside and Out with Sage, episode 2. We're recording live on the Fandom Empire YouTube channel, and we're recording for the Fandom Empire YouTube channel, but streaming live on the Ray channel. Joining me this evening is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, guy I've known for, is it crazy that it's been like half a decade now? That alone makes me feel old. It's Ben Hart. How's it going, man?
How's it going, guys? Good to be here. And thanks so much for having me on. Looking forward to it.
You know, I think this is the first time I've been able to visually see you since probably Toronto
Since what?
2018. So
2018. Yeah, and it feels like forever ago.
does it to you?
Ridiculous.
Really? It feels.
It does.
Wow. See, I mean, time is subjective, I guess, to all people. For me, it doesn't feel like it's been almost 2 years. It feels like, you know, we did that 7 or 8 months ago, but in fact has been almost 2 years, which is crazy.
It's insane. It's been a whirlwind for me. So I think that's one issue with me is that there's just so much has happened since then. So it's been a while, and but this is awesome getting to do, because as I was telling you before the show, I don't do this a whole lot. The whole video thing, having myself be on camera. In fact, I turn the lights on in here. I never podcast with the lights on, but I'm doing it for you guys. And I also will warn you that I'm not going to be looking at the camera because I'm used to staring off into oblivion while I'm talking, because I'm not usually looking at anyone. So if I look crazy, yeah, you get the picture.
Hey, I've caught myself already so many times. Right now I'm looking at my computer monitor, and it's like, right, actually I'm supposed to be looking right there at the camera, but most of the time I'm not. So that's an adjustment to get used to. You're so used to using audio for so long, and the excitement of using videos there, and then it's like, oh, right. Not only do I need to make sure the audio is good, I now need to make sure the video is good. So
yeah, just another layer, and it's another stress level.
Oh, I mean, as I was setting this up, all it is layer after layer after layer after layer, and it just keeps going and going and going. Where it stops, nobody knows. I just wanted to point out, in your background right there, on the wall, you have the Force Awakens thing. I can't lift it up because I have the guitar beside me, but I got like a little chest where you put things, and exact same cover on the chest. That's what's on your wall. So
Oh, nice.
cool.
I love that design.
I do.
It's one of my favorite posters from Force Awakens is that one right there.
Absolutely. Hey, say what you want about the sequel trilogy, whether you're over the moon about it, mixed reviews about it, or maybe even hate it. One thing you can't deny, the visuals that it has produced are second to none.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, in Inside and Out, we try to, pun intended, get inside and out of our guests, and we have Ben Hart here to do that with. And let's go all the way back to the beginning, man. How the last time I asked you this question, there was probably a lot fewer people listening or watching, and we were inside an Airbnb downtown Toronto. And let's just go back to that question now. And how exactly did this, what's now a behemoth, the Star Wars Underworld, in my opinion, all get started? Like, where's the starting point? What's the story behind the Underworld?
Yeah, it is an interesting story that I've told 1,000 times, and I try to make it interesting each time, and still try to almost miss some things too. But the basic gist of it was, for several years, I was kind of adrift online. There wasn't a lot going on as far as Star Wars goes. And, after Revenge of the Sith, that was it. That was the ending. And I was still a big Star Wars fan. But at that point, I was like, okay, well, Star Wars is ending. I've got to move on, obviously. Star Wars, it's just a kid thing. I got to grow up. I got to be normal like everybody else, and not be so into something and be weirdo like those Star Wars fans. So that was my line of thinking at that time. So I kind of drifted away, did some other things, and then eventually came back to Star Wars. And then at that point, there still wasn't a lot happening. So I got into fan films. I got into kind of some fandom stuff, but I really wasn't into the actual fandom. I wasn't going to Star Wars Celebration. I wasn't involved. I wasn't even on Facebook or Twitter at that point. It was just kind of this random thing. And then the Clone Wars happened. And that really thrust me back into Star Wars and really reinvigorated my whole fandom for Star Wars and put me back into the actual fandom of, everything. And so there was some stuff going on at StarWars.com. I was on Facebook, but there really wasn't a whole lot of fandom stuff going on Facebook at that time. I don't even know what Twitter was doing at that point because I wasn't over there. But there was definitely stuff happening on the episode guide for Clone Wars, and I got involved with that. And I was mostly a reader at some point, up until about season 2. I think it was the episode Cat and Mouse, where I, now legendarily, took the name Admiral Trench because it was a new episode and I didn't have to add numbers to my name. It was just a new name that I could take. So at that point, I started commenting as Admiral Trench on those things, and I got to know some people and whatever. And it kind of grew and grew and grew as the seasons go on. And eventually I came to the point where I want to start something on my own. I want to do something. And at that point, to be honest, it all started when we were, I don't want to say it. Yeah, I'm just going to say it. Illegally sharing links to Clone Wars episodes because a friend of mine was running a... No, that's never happened. That never happened. Wink, wink. But at that point, we were, of course, as they would come out, people would share links to them. And I think I was buying on iTunes or something. I wasn't totally into that, but I was up to sharing it and helping out my friend. And then it kind of grew and grew in that point. And then the mods on StarWars.com, obviously you're sharing links to illegal downloads on the official Star Wars site. They're going to get onto you. So we started going through that process, and the mods were deleting people and deleting posts. And eventually we're like, okay, I have an opportunity here to make something off-site that's my own, to talk about the Clone Wars, to share links to Clone Wars episodes, and kind of call it my own. And I've always, well before this happened, I was always into the Star Wars news. I was always keeping up with everything just for my own personal benefit. So I'm like, okay, I could do this and I could start a Facebook page and I could do whatever. And so a few things rattled around my mind, something along the lines of something that was specifically focused on Clone Wars. But I was like, nah, I'm into more things than just Clone Wars. I love all things Star Wars. So why not call it, something along those lines? So I initially conceived the Star Wars Underground as a Facebook page. And that name popped in my head. I think it came from Need for Speed Underground. I think that's what was my thinking. And then I looked around on Facebook, and there was this one group called Star Wars Underground. It was a costuming group. And I'm like, oh God, I can't have that. It's gotta be original. I can't come up with something that someone already has. So I settled for the Star Wars Underworld. And the page took off after that. There was several people that came on board.
Boy, did it.
One of them being Chris.
Quarter of a million likes.
Yeah, so my friend Chris Sequel, who I met him through that page, and then he came on board, and then there was a few other friends that came on board, and some people that I still know today, like Dan Grievous. He was around way back when. He was one of the first people I knew. I knew him as a YouTuber before I actually got to know him as a friend, and I geeked out when I actually heard that he was a fan of my page. And back then you became a fan of a Facebook page. There was no likes or anything. So it just grew, and Chris came on board, and he had some grand plans for what he wanted to do and what he was really wanted to saw the potential in the Star Wars Underworld in regards to creating a website, creating a Facebook page, I kind of took care of Twitter and stuff like that, but he wanted to do a podcast, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to get online have people hear my voice. That's ludicrous. But I was dragged kicking and screaming into that, and it was a year to the day after I started the Facebook page on April 10th, 1919. I'm going to say I'm really old here. 99. 2010 is when April 10th, and then in 2011, a year to the day later, we launched the official Star Wars Underworld .com website. And then it wasn't too long after that when we started our podcast, and it kind of just went from there. And now we are, as of April this year, which is crazy enough, next month, will be our 10th anniversary.
That's not so. 10th anniversary for the podcast or 10th anniversary overall?
Overall, for the beginning of the Facebook page, which is kind of what we mark as, which is why I'm called the founder, even though like I just started the Facebook page. Like,
It's got to start somewhere, man. Absolutely.
that is true.
So, I mean, you guys did it at the right time because, I mean, 10 years ago to this date, 2010, Clone Wars is going strong. Actually, I guess Clone Wars would be in what, its third season then? Fourth season?
That was third season, the latter part of season 3, I think.
So you're on the Clone Wars wave. A couple of years later, Lucasfilm sold to Disney and immediately announced that we're getting Star Wars Episode 7, 8, and 9. So you guys are already set up with the Clone Wars stuff, and all of a sudden now you're going to be covering a brand new Star Wars trilogy. And you're not much younger than I am.
Right.
So you probably grew up on the prequels. Nothing against the original trilogy movies. I love them. But you would have been at that age. And now all of a sudden you have this podcast and Facebook page and 3 brand new movies, or as it turned out to be 5 new movies, to build your podcast around. I mean, the timing had to be pretty good. Did you guys, what did you guys do in terms of, because I didn't start listening to you guys till I think it was the beginning of 2014. And it might have been the end of 2013. But at the point of when it's announced that Lucasfilm has been sold to Disney and we're getting new movies, what's going on in the Star Wars Underworld cave? Does your plan change? Is it okay, now we can really get to work with this stuff?
Well, yeah, it was kind of a happy accident that we just, we were riding the wave of Clone Wars, and we all, like everyone that I got to know back in the day, was a fan of Clone Wars. And that's why we started the podcast, so we could talk about episodes of the Clone Wars. And there was very little news. We had maybe 1 or 2 pieces of news on any given episode. In fact, I've gone back and looked at our show notes from way back in the day, and there was very little, like one little announcement about Star Wars Celebration that was coming up in a year, like not much to go on. And, we had Star Wars 1313 on the horizon. The Old Republic MMO, I think, was going on at that point. We had the trailers, something like that. Yeah, so that was happening. Clone Wars was there. The Star Wars Underworld TV live action series was on the horizon, or maybe perhaps at that point had already been canned or shelved, as they say. But there really wasn't a whole lot going on. But at that point, we had accepted the idea that, or at least I had, that Star Wars, there wasn't going to be any more Star Wars movies. Return of the Jedi was it. George Lucas was done. He didn't want to do any more movies. And that was that. And we were going to get more stuff on TV. Clone Wars was going to go on for the foreseeable future. And that was it. We had, Force Unleashed 2, I think, was coming or going at that point. And we were happy with that. We were excited, and we were just content to keep going as it was. I don't remember thinking about what we're going to do, next year or in 10 years, what's going to happen. We were just kind of biding our time. And then that fateful day happened, October 30th, 2012, when we got that massive news. And it just blew everyone away. And it's funny listening to all the podcasts and paying attention to all the fan side stuff that I pay attention to now. It's funny to see how many of them have started since that date, or have even started since The Force Awakens came out, because so many people were coming in, so many people were motivated to do that. And at that point, I felt like an old man, because I'm like, I've been here all this time. And, y'all young whippersnappers are coming in here with your new podcasts and stuff. And I was more than welcome to them. But it was very weird. And it's still a weird feeling to think about how long we've been around and how the Star Wars Underworld really predates all the stuff that's happening right now.
All right, let's shift gears. We're going to come back to the Star Wars Underworld in a little bit when we talk about podcasts. But you're part of another successful podcast with a guy who is going to be who I've worked with in the past. And time for shameless plug here, but Zach Arnold of the Intergalactic Peace Coalition alongside Ben Hart. But Zach and I are going to be starting a new YouTube show starting Saturday. We'll be doing it once or twice a month, and it's called Sequels and Shots, where we talk only about movie sequels while watching them, and maybe doing something that involves those said shots. So I'm sure it will be entertaining to those who are watching. I cannot promise that there will be no graphic imagery that happens. Um, IPC though starts. How's it get its start? How do you and Zach meet up and get this thing going?
Well, I think it all started with, first of all, I think it started with me and Zach kind of bonding over the Clone Wars. I don't know how we actually first got. Then I assume Zach, I think, just came into the SWU. He was a fan of that page and was following our posts, and then eventually we became friends on Facebook. And then we first met, ironically enough, your previous guest, Mr. Dave Gramillion. We did a, of course, Dave, for those who don't know, he rewrote the first the Star Wars prequels as his own books, his own fan fiction novels, and they're really good, I have to say. And even as someone who liked the prequels, he did a really good job of kind of reimagining them. And I was a fan of his. I'm like, hey, I like your writing, all this kind of stuff. And me and Dave, were back and forth about that for a while. And Zach was also in that group. And at some point, we just did a podcast about, I think it was for the Star Wars Underworld, where we just got together to talk about his books. And I believe that was the first time we ever talked on Skype, me and Zach. And then I remember there was some incident where I had to leave or something like that in the middle of the podcast. Like was interrupted or whatever. And Zach took over. And I remember having the impression of, oh my gosh, this guy, he's a pro. He knows what he's doing. He can really kind of carry a conversation. And not everyone can do that. Podcasting is not as easy as it looks. You some people are naturally kind of gifted at it in a way. And some people over a long period of time get okay at it, like me. But Zach and I just kind of bonded over that. And then eventually at some point in that frame, and this is a story I've only told maybe once or twice on air, but there was an incident on the Star Wars Underworld Facebook page, I think, where a one William Shatner started commenting on the page. And who knows if it was the real William Shatner? I, to this day, do not know. But it got me thinking. I don't remember what he said. It could have easily, and those were days where there was a lot of fake accounts running around. It probably wasn't Bill Shatner, but let's just pretend it was. I was inspired by that moment. I was like, okay, this whole thing between Star Wars versus Star Trek, I always thought it was dumb anyway. I was always a fan of Star Wars and Star Trek. So I'm like, what if there was a place where a movement, a coalition, if you will, to end this divide between Star Trek and Star Wars fans and all fandoms, the place everyone can hang out and be cool. And I just kind of created the page as a joke. It started as a Facebook page, Intergalactic Peace Coalition. And it just kind of did there, and I messed around with it, and eventually I think Zach came online and helped me out with it. And there was a few other people involved, but eventually it came down to Zach presenting me with the idea of, hey, what if we did a podcast together? I'm like, okay, I would be great. At that point, I was only doing Star Wars Underworld. I would love to do another podcast that was not just about Star Wars, but literally anything. So we brought that up, and he said, okay, well, why don't we just use the Intergalactic Peace Coalition as our base, use that as the name and as the basis for the show. So he kind of came up with the concept, and we ran with it. And now we are 275 episodes later. We are going strong, a few different changes here and there. We got a new intro. We've got, new segments, whatever, but it's basically the same thing. We literally talk about whatever the heck we want, and it's been the time of my life.
I think it was, I did Star Wars Wastelands with some combination of McMahon, Armando, and Thomas for, probably 4 years, and 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And I always listened to IPC as much as I could. And the one thing I liked about IPC is you guys touched on not just Star Wars. The first time I ever appeared on IPC was to talk Star Wars. But you had no problem going and talking, Jurassic Park or Pirates of the Caribbean or Back to the Future or you name it. And it really inspired me that, where Star Wars was at that time, like it was... I don't think the toxicity in the fandom right now is as bad as it was, say, a year and a half ago. Just my opinion.
It's yeah.
I really wanted to branch off and do something that involved everything. And if it wasn't for you guys, I don't think I ever would have even had the guts to attempt that. So My hat's off to you guys in that regard.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm always flattered to hear when some people say, "Hey, I listened to what you did, and I started my own podcast," because I did the same thing. I listened to other podcasts. I'm like, "Hey, I'd like to be more like them. I want to do what they're doing, and try to be as good as them." And that's an honor to me to know that if you affect someone else, if you affect someone else's life, that means the world to me.
So let me ask you: there's a bunch of people out there that try to podcast, and look, whether you have, 20,000 listeners, 2,000 listeners, 40 listeners a week, or even 5 listeners a week, we all know the Star Wars Underworld is a highly successful podcast. So is IPC, but the Underworld has reached, hundreds of thousands of people. And what does it take, in your opinion, for someone who's just starting off to run a successful podcast?
I mean, I think the key thing is consistency and sticking with it. I think, and also think that you can't have your expectations too high in regards to, thinking that, oh, I'm going to start this podcast and by the end of the month I'm going to have 1,000 listeners, and it doesn't work like that. You're going to be disappointed. And I think you have to be willing to say, hey, you have to be, I think, satisfied with what you are going to end up getting, which is, maybe, 20 listeners on your first show, if that, and your first show is probably going to be terrible. But you're going to push through it, and you're going to make better shows, and you're going to make stuff you're really, really proud of later. But you have to keep going. I think it's like that with anything. It's like that with just be consistent. Set yourself up in a place where people know they can come back week after week and get a show. They can come back and get the same thing every single week, and it's there. It's always going to be there, and people know that. They'll keep supporting you. And I think also just surround yourself with people that you are friends with, that you really work off well. I think, some people can do, sing by themselves podcasting. I know plenty of people who do, and they're fine at it, but not me. And I think a lot of other people are also intimidated by it. It's much easier when you're with a friend, when you're with somebody that you can play off of well. And I think that's one of the reasons why, the Star Wars Underworld podcast or the IPC podcast or any other podcast that has been successful does, because we have good chemistry. We have, I understand them. I know when they're going to talk, when they're not going to talk. We're good fit for each other. I think your chemistry is really good, and I think that can be said for any show. Really is, good chemistry and doing it and having a support system. Because if you're doing it by yourself, you can go, I'll just push it off to next week, and then next week. If you're doing it with someone, you have to be there. You have to be there. You're like, okay, so and so is going to expect me to do a show this Friday. I have to be there. So that helps you to keep going and whatever, and help keep it fun. And that's what it is. Most of the time, these things aren't. You're not going to get any money for it. This isn't a job. This is a hobby. And, if you can eventually work it into something that you can make money off of it and make it a job, then that's great, but probably not at least for a long, long time, and if ever. So, make it fun, keep it consistent, surround yourself with people that, you really like and you're friends with, and, just keep at it.
So I'm going to interrupt the podcast. See, force a habit. I just went to call it a podcast again. I'm so not that it's not, because we're going to be releasing all of our material in podcast format here soon. It's not available at the moment, but we're going to interrupt the fandom news for some sporting news here that's spreading rapidly. I don't know if you've seen this yet, Ben. I did not intend to bring this up on the show, since anywhere you look on social media, you're seeing Corona. The NBA has suspended its entire season indefinitely. One of the players has apparently been infected and obviously been in contact with his teammates and other teams and officials. And so the NBA season has been suspended indefinitely. That's just crazy. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. This thing has a life of its own, and it just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, it's sad because today we got the news about E3 being canceled, and that's really sucks. And everyone's kind of worried about Star Wars Celebration and San Diego Comic Con, and yeah, it really sucks. But also, we got to be looking out for everyone that's involved in this and could potentially get sick and even die from this coronavirus. And I just saw in the news that Tom Hanks apparently has the coronavirus, which is
Seriously?
awful.
Oh
Seriously,
no.
that is some news that I just saw. Best of wishes to him and his wife, who apparently both have it. It's obviously it's survivable. It's not as bad as some people are making it out to be, but it's also not any good because a lot of people have died. A lot of people will die from this, and people, especially people that are susceptible to it. So, yeah, it's a mess, but hopefully taking steps like that will save lives.
I hope so. I mean, I feel like some of these steps are common sense that people should have already been doing already, but it is what it is.
You're not wrong.
Let's keep this ball rolling here, though, and get into. Let's talk a little bit about Lucasfilm, man. We're going to work a little bit backwards here. So Bob Iger's out at the head of Disney, planned out, but he's out now. We have an Indiana Jones movie that might come out next year, might come out the year after, might never come out. Who knows? We have Star Wars movies that are still slated for 2022, 2024, and 2026.
Yeah.
We had Jason from Making Star Wars saying a couple months ago that the next batch of Star Wars movies you'll see are, in fact, the High Republic movies. But since then, you've had a bunch of Lucasfilm officials saying, no, it's just publishing, and I don't know what the hell's going on anymore, and maybe that's a good thing. But, is this just them trying to control the narrative and be like, okay, so when the High Republic novels are successful and people are digging them, then they can say, yeah, now we're doing movies off this, rather than just coming out and saying that it's all going to be connected. It would seem really weird that, say what you want, whether you love the sequel trilogy or not, or you're in the middle. I feel like I'm someone who's in the middle.
Yeah.
It was not planned out. It's clear as day this thing was
No,
not thoroughly planned out. But you've been planning out a publishing series for the last 6 years?
I would hope that this is a reaction to the sequel trilogy, or at the very least, a reaction to the overall plan for the sequel trilogy, which was no plan. And and the sequel trilogy is in and of itself, it's just it was them trying to copy the original trilogy. The original trilogy wasn't planned out. They didn't think this one needed to be planned out. They were just going to grow with it and let it go. And I think certain things worked out fine. Other things definitely did not. And we all have our opinions on it, but I think High Republic, I feel like it feels like a slow burn of a plan, of a something. I don't care what they say in regards to there's not going to be any movies. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. There absolutely is. And I'm not even talking about like the rumors or what Jason has said or anything like that. I'm talking about like just logic based. They're setting up a new era of Star Wars storytelling 200 years prior to Phantom Menace. They're absolutely going to, if the reaction is good to this, if people really like it, people are going to be asking for this. And not only that, they're going to want to give it to them. They're going to want to give them movies and stuff like that. I think they're absolutely setting this up to say, okay, well, let's do this. Let's see how people react. Let's set it up with books and comics, and let's create our own new era that could potentially, be good fertile ground for movies, TV shows, whatever. I guarantee you, they've already got scripts. They've already got stuff on, ready to go that they can use whenever they eventually get the green light.
Let's pretend here that Celebration doesn't get canceled this year.
Right.
When's Celebration? The beginning of August?
I believe it's the end of August, or maybe beginning.
Okay,
I can't remember.
Well, the first High Republic novel is out in August. I believe it's towards the end of August. So
I think the first High Republic novel comes out right before Celebration, I think.
So is there a chance that they go, okay, so the next movie series / trilogy is at Celebration? Or are they, when are we going to get and then like the last thing I want them to do is we're announcing this, and then it doesn't end up being this because God knows they've had a horrendous track record with that stuff. But like,
Right. Yeah. Don't announce anything until
it'd
it's
be cool just
absolutely
to know
going
what
to
it's
happen.
about. You don't have to be like this person's in it and this person's directing it and this is the cinematographer, etc. It'd just be cool to be like, yes, the next batch of movies is going to be in this whatever era.
I feel like what has been rumored in regards to what the Game of Thrones guys were working on, what Ryan Johnson's been working on, and what Kevin Feige has been working on are not High Republic stuff. That's just my gut feeling. I feel like those have been separate, and I feel like High Republic was is coming down the pipe, and I think they have plans, tentative plans to do something in that era, but DB Weiss and what those guys were like working on, which was supposed to be the next thing. I think that was maybe more ancient stuff, more like really old Republic stuff. And I think if that comes to pass or whatever, I think they're gonna roll out something in the meantime. We're gonna have High Republic, and we're gonna have some kind of new thing that we don't know that's either set in the past or the future or whatever. And then that will eventually lead into and give them time to gauge the interest in High Republic and give them time to feel it out and say what are fans responding to or whatever. And I'm not so sure I want them to do that. Like, I am very much in the camp that, like, do what's best for the story, do what's best what you think is best. Don't necessarily listen to the fans. But at the same time, I think Lucasfilm has been reactionary, very reactionary. They are terrified of making the fans angry, I think, at this point. I think The Rise of Skywalker is a perfect example of that. I'm not going to get into that right now, but I think that's a perfect example of it. And so going into this, I think they're going to really play their cards close to their vest and kind of go, okay, we're going to put all these books, and then we're going to do some movies maybe, and then we'll see what happens after. And see, we had that rumor about, January they were going to release the new director, and that didn't happen. So, I mean, when is that going to happen? Are they going to wait till August? Are they going to announce anything this year? They don't have to. They got 2 or 3 years after this where, and they fired the guys.
Date or not.
And I think I think they're very satisfied and very proud of what they're doing on TV. Both big things they've done have been very well received. Mandalorian, hugely well received. I think they were shocked by that and how well it was received. And then Clone Wars is getting a good reception. So, like, I think they're like, okay, we got this TV thing down. Like, let's keep doing that, and we'll worry about the movies later.
Yeah, you got the Mandalorian season 2 coming. I have no idea what the hell's happening with Kenobi now. From everything to,
who knows?
I mean, I think it was penciled for a 2021 release date. Very well, still could hit that late in 2021. But well, the last I heard, you had Jason Ward going over and appearing on Den of Nerds and saying that they're talking about it possibly being a movie again. And it's just like, why? Like, just keep it a TV series.
Wow.
Like, I'm okay with Star Wars TV. I think we might get a Rebels sequel series in the fall. It seems to be the rumor anyway.
Yeah.
Now there's some rumors swirling around about how it may involve Luke Skywalker in some way with Rex. Whether they turn out to be true or completely false, we'll see. I'd be up for that. They'll sign me up for some Mark Hamill and D. Bradley Baker. I don't know who else wouldn't sign up for that. However, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it needs to somehow come back to Ahsoka and Sabine and Thrawn and Ezra at some point. But hell, maybe it'll be all new characters that go and solve that mystery. We'll find out in time. We're going to get to our final topic here of the night. I do got to cut this a little short due to some unforeseen circumstances, but we're going to touch on that topic. You just said that's a story for another time in the Star Wars sequel trilogy.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to... Okay, I want you to give your brief feelings about the trilogy as a whole, and then I'll give mine. I'll give mine, then you give yours. So the way I would describe it is The Force Awakens is one of my favorite Star Wars movies of all time. I think it's number 3 on my list. And although I do feel like they played it safe, and the movie moves very quick. The Last Jedi, I disagree with an incredible amount of the decisions made in it. I'm going to come back to The Last Jedi, though. At the end of the day, I just didn't believe a lot of the story they were trying to tell, but that's my personal beliefs. Ultimately, that is the story. I got to deal with it. The Rise of Skywalker feels like it could have been this really cool, dark, gritty, almost horror-like Star Wars movie that at the end of the day was really rushed, contradicts itself time and time again, is extremely messy. Now you have the novel coming out contradicting a bunch of things that we've seen on screen. And I just, as a movie, still, I enjoyed The Rise of Skywalker more than The Last Jedi just because of the story it was trying to tell. But I'll give The Last Jedi this, even though I don't agree with the story it told, not only does The Last Jedi's story run seamlessly together, it's organized, it's properly planned out, it is not a complete mess, and at the end of the day, they told a story that at least connects with itself, where The Rise of Skywalker just felt like, all right, let's throw all this shit we want against a wall and pray to God it sticks and hope for the best.
Yeah, they had all the fingers and all their toes crossed, and it still didn't work.
At the end of the day, I'm happy we got the sequel trilogy. It's not the sequel trilogy that I necessarily would have preferred, especially when I thought the whole point of canning Legends was to go and do something new, not just take a lot of the Legends material and repackage it and give it right back to us. Cough, cough, Dark Empire. But that's what we got, and at the end of the day, I'm happy we got something over nothing, but it just sort of feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity for me. But hey, there's like $5.5 billion worth of profit between the 5 new movies that says Hey Sage, shut up.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter. That's what I say. Like, no matter what we complain about, and I've done a lot of complaining and praising of this trilogy. No matter what we say, like, it's still like they came away like loaded. Like, this movie made a lot of money for Disney, and I can't help but think they'd call it a win, no matter what. So, as far as my thoughts go, like, movie by movie, The Force Awakens, I think, is amazing. I think it's a really well done movie. I think the story obviously could have been more original. It could have done more things. It could have been more original and been more braver in the sense of, like, just everything about it. But at the same time, I love that movie to death, and I think it really was a great note to bring back Star Wars on and reintroduce Star Wars to a whole new generation. So I think it's great. Last Jedi is a movie that I had a very tumultuous relationship with early on. I really reacted badly to a lot of things in there, and I was kind of like with you in the sense that, a lot of the decisions I didn't really care for, even though I respected Rian Johnson and I saw what he was trying to do with. I think in retrospect, I think the more time goes on, I appreciate the movie more. Just the simple fact that, it's no longer a shock value of, oh my God, Snoke died. I've accepted that fact. I've accepted a lot of things and those wounds are not as, open anymore in regards to certain things that I really did not like. But I think other parts of the movie are phenomenal. I think it absolutely nails many, many things and gets a few things wrong. It's a flawed movie, but I still think it's one of the best Star Wars movies, I think, really, as far as like story structure and what it does and the messages that it points across and everything. And I actually, part of the reason I appreciate it so much right now is because of the next movie. I appreciate it much more in retrospect after seeing The Rise of Skywalker, which I am not the biggest fan of. As I've said, if anybody follows me on social media or any podcasts, it's, as you said, it's. I don't want to use all those like buzzwords. I don't want to sound like a hater, but it's a train wreck. It really is. It's the ultimate mixed bag. That's the thing that I try to get across, is that I like so many things about this movie. So many things it gets perfectly. And then the other half of the movie is just, what were they thinking? It's just the ultimate, it reminds me of Batman v Superman. And oh, by the way, the same guy wrote both those movies. Oh, well. So it's just, it's a baffling thing And it's something that I really want to go back and watch because I only saw it a few times in the theaters, not as many as I wanted to, and I want to go back and actually watch it again because I do enjoy it. Every time I watch it, I enjoy it more. But I also, the flaws of it and the things that it contradicts and that it reacts badly to The Last Jedi and it goes different places that it shouldn't. And as you said, it contradicts itself time and time again. It's just a mess. And, I'm finding ways to appreciate it more as time goes on, but still, as you said, it really was just a disappointing end to the trilogy, which I think was really strong up until Last Jedi. I feel like even though Last Jedi had its flaws and it was doing something different and it wasn't maybe as perfectly in line with Force Awakens as it could have been, I still think it was carrying on and doing something. And if they just let it go to the end, it would have really helped the whole trilogy flow really well. But I feel like Rise of Skywalker is just a mess.
At the end of the day, for me, when you plan out a trilogy, you should have most of the trilogy planned out when you start, not make it up as you go. And this falls on whoever had the final say on being like, okay, instead of let's cohesively planning this out, we're going to let you tell your story, you tell your story, you tell your story, and just do our best to connect them. And I don't think that was the right way to do it. I think maybe they've learned their lesson with this High Republic stuff.
Maybe.
Time will certainly tell, but that's going to do it for all of our time this evening. I apologize that I have to cut this short. Ideally, I wanted to go about 15 to 20 minutes longer, but things happen, and that's what happens when you have a newborn. So, alrighty.
Life goes on.
Yes, it certainly does. Ben, where can everybody find you at, man?
Oh, they can find pretty much everything that I do over at StarWarsUnderworld.com. You can find the IPC podcast there. You can find the Star Wars Underworld podcast there. You can find the Clone Wars Strikes Back. You can find Radio Razor Crest, with both of those doing, episodes of The Mandalorian and the Clone Wars and a bunch of other podcasts and a lot of the latest news. I do a lot of my work on social media. You can follow at the SWU at IPC Podcast on all the social media platforms. And if for some reason you want to get more of what's coming out of my mouth just in text form, you can follow me at Ben Hart with no E on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And exactly how it sounds.
That's awesome, man. Awesome. Don't forget, everybody, you can subscribe to our new YouTube channel, which is actually our old YouTube channel repackaged, and that's Fandom Empire. All subscribers in the month of April are being entered in a draw to win two. The same person won't win both. It'll be two different ones. Two the Rise of Skywalker digital Blu-rays. So if you're a subscriber, you'll be entered in the draw, and we'll see if you come out a winner of that, fun and entertaining mess. You can also check us out on Facebook at Fandom Empire. If you're a Halloween fan, check us out at Halloween Kills 2020 or our Star Wars The High Republic news page. And you can follow us on Twitter, where we seem to gain no traction whatsoever at Fandom Empire now. Same on Instagram as well. Ben, thanks for doing this tonight, man. Greatly appreciated, and we'll catch you on the flip side, dude.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun, and I'll talk to you guys later.